Hello everyone and welcome back to Navis Nobilite. I am Captain Zelnick and we are continuing our ship overviews of the Space Marine chapters and their vessels. Today we're talking about the Seditio Oprim, the Venerable Battle Barge with the fancy bombardment cannon broadsides. There. Keeping it nice and simple without this weird pseudo-Latin. So this is the Ultramarines battle barge because absolutely everybody must have something involving the Ultramarines in an official rule sense. Now, what exactly do you get for having a 450-point battle barge? Given that we already pointed out that the original battle barge at 425 was not necessarily the strongest warship option that you could necessarily have. Well, there's a couple of pretty significant changes. Well, let's have a look at its stats. First, it's a Battleship 12, no real surprise there. The same speed as the normal battle barge at 20 centimeters, a 45-degree turn, critically 4 shields, the 6 up all-around armor, and 4 turrets. So right there, we have a standard battleship stat line with the exception of the armor. That right there is really where most of those points are going into, bringing these up to a standard battleship level. Now, what is it equipped with? Instead of it having the port and starboard weapons batteries at strength 12 at 45, it is equipped with a strength 8 port and starboard bombardment cannon, and it keeps the dorsal bombardment cannon, the prow launch bays, and the prow torpedoes. Now, critically, this counts as a venerable battle barge as is and does not need to pay 35 points for having Space Marines. All you really need to do is have its weapons batteries on the side modeled as lance batteries to identify the Seditio, this thing. So, what exactly is this thing meant to do? Well, obviously, given that it is a tougher ship, it is meant to get in close and with its very powerful bombardment cannon broadside and dorsal addition, basically fold enemy ships in half. It is particularly effective against things with really good armor, like Necrons or Prow of Orcs. It's, again, actually far weaker against Eldar. You do not want to go up against an Eldar player with this particular vessel, given its very poor range, and there really is no difference when dealing with Eldar when you're using bombardment cannons or weapons batteries, because they all act the exact same. This is basically trying to make a battle barge a little more effective in a short-range fleet engagement against smaller vessels, but it still is a big threat to larger vessels as well. Again, the critical point is you have to get close. And even if it has that fourth shield and that fourth turret, it still shares all of the weaknesses of the Space Marine fleet, which is namely uh, just because you have 6 up armor doesn't mean you're going to be, protected from everything. There are a lot of other races that have lances, and they know exactly what to do when they're dealing with a Space Marine player. The Seditio Oprimir, I guess that's it, is still a battleship. It is still comparatively slow, and it's a giant target, and it is very short range, which means certain races are going to have the advantage on range and very likely try to remove this thing as a threat. Now, as a Space Marine player and an Ultramarine player trying to utilize this in a fleet engagement, it functions excellently as a giant distraction while your other ships are moving in for boarding actions and torpedo strikes, but it's a very expensive one. This is really meant for the Ultramarine fan who wants to have a very fluffy list. And I can't blame them for that. A lot of what Battlefleet Gothic is fluffy. It's a lot of people playing the fleet that they have as an army. And even still, even if this thing is technically undergunned by comparison to many other battleships in the game, and certainly outranged, it has all of the benefits of having a Space Marine crew. It is very effective in planetary assault and on exterminatus missions. It is astoundingly dangerous if it ever gets within 30 centimeters of any target. So it's not a bad ship. It is simply not meant to be a battleship in the sense of it's meant to fight other battleships. Against other cruisers, this thing will simply fold them in half and then break it over its knee, simply because bombardment cannons are astoundingly effective at destroying smaller ships. or really inconveniencing larger ones. Um, Again, do not anticipate. Oh, one very important thing: it only has 2 Thunderhawks as opposed to 3 Thunderhawks. My apologies. But again, don't be disappointed if you field this and your enemy takes one solid look at it and doesn't want it to live for very long. It is tougher than your average battleship with its 4 shields, 4 turrets, and 6 armor, but it is still very, very slow, and it only has 30 centimeter range. Now, I'm going to take this video opportunity to go and talk about the other venerable battle barges. Space Marines have the opportunity to take multiple different kinds of venerable battle barges that call back to their history of when they were the ones commanding the Imperial Navy. And examples like Apocalypse battleships, Emperor battleships, Chaos cruisers, Imperial cruisers in Space Marine fleets exist in the lore and have for a very long time. They are, however, witheringly rare and only are really permitted to exist via the fluff because the Imperial Navy doesn't want to have to go through the trouble of taking away these things and potentially being shot at by Space Marines who generally don't have any real reason not to shoot at the Imperial Navy when they're coming and taking their treasured toys. So, how do you pick a battle barge? A Space Marine fleet may include a single, meaning only one, venerable battle barge. That does include, by the way, the Seditio Operim, this thing. Um, and it can be any Imperial or Chaos, painted appropriately, battleship, grand cruiser, battle cruiser, or heavy cruiser. So no standard cruisers. You have to have things battle cruiser or above. And of course, exception of character vessels like Terminus Est. This replaces one of the battle barges allowed in your fleet. The normal cost must be paid for the ship, plus an additional 35 points. So this makes whatever you're taking quite expensive, but you gain all the benefits of a Space Marine crew. You also, the vessel, if it is an ancient and it is revered icon of the Space Marine chapter, therefore, it is worth 100% victory points if crippled and 150 victory points if destroyed. So bear this in mind. Venerable Battle Barge, like it says, has all Space Marine relevant rules. Um, you may only use it in its basic form. You cannot take upgrades on it. So again, bear that all in mind. You can, however, take special refits that the Space Marines can self-take on battle barges. Now, these are the following upgrades that your options are. Any launch base and Thunderhawks. Any launch bay on a venerable battle barge can have their launch base capacity halved, rounding up. For example, an Imperial Mars with 2 launch bays on each side is reduced to 1 on each side, and the Styx with 3 launch bays is reduced to 2 on each side, making the Styx a very popular choice. These launch bays are configured to carry Thunderhawks, and they can only take Thunderhawks. They cannot launch any other form of attack craft. This is a compulsory refit that applies to all venerable battle barges, which means you take an Emperor, you take a Despoiler, you do not have a choice. You must do this. So, also, prow weapons and boarding torpedoes. Any venerable battle barge equipped with a prow weapon, regardless of what it is, may, if desired, replace it with a strength 6 torpedo tubes for no change in cost. As with all Space Marine vessels, these tubes may also be used to launch boarding torpedoes. The boarding torpedoes are manned by Space Marines to get the +1 to hit and run attacks. So, what does this mean? It means you have a great deal of flexibility in a fleet that normally is not flexible at all. The Space Marine fleet is very heavily dependent on fast-moving attack craft and light and maneuverable escort craft, with a very large plotting battle barge that is not actually designed well for fleet engagements. Despite what Black Library tells us, a battle barge is not really meant for fleet engagements. It's meant for planetary assaults. So this gives the Space Marine a tiny little edge, a teeny tiny little edge that allows them to take some stuff that they normally are not allowed to take and kind of pushes them up in a fleet engagement to actually compete heavily with other fleets. So really popular examples of ships that I have seen are things like the Executor Grand Cruiser, which is a very, very cheap Grand Cruiser from the Chaos list, but it has 6 lances on either side. Similarly, the Apocalypse Battleship is very popular because it gets a Nova Cannon and long-range 6 lances on both sides. The Styx Heavy Cruiser is very common as well. So when you are trying to select your venerable battle barge for your Space Marine fleet, think about what exactly your fleet is missing. So if your fleet in particular doesn't really have a lot of torpedoes, it may be a good idea for you to take a repulsive Grand Cruiser. It may be a good idea for you to take some of the Imperial battle cruisers that have torpedoes and long-range lances. If you're finding yourself lacking in lances, you aren't taking any Nova escorts. Maybe you should think about taking an Armageddon battle cruiser, or maybe you should be taking, again, the repulsive, or you could be taking the Executor or the Apocalypse. If you're finding yourself lacking in launch capacity, the Styx heavy cruiser or the Emperor or the Despoiler are all viable options that will make your Space Marine fleet more competitive in the cruiser sector. But always remember, these are very expensive vessels. You only get one, so you have to be very careful. Your enemy will recognize them and try to remove them from the game. They will try to make you disengage them if they can. So be very specific about what you need and how you use them, especially in campaigns, because when they're gone, they're gone. So, and you'll have to find a whole new one and play that fun game again. So, bear all of this in mind. Venerable battle barges can give Space Marines the quintessential edge. It can absolutely give them the opportunity to win in battles that they normally would not stand a chance in. Space Marines suffer heavily against Eldar. Eldar are very good at defeating Space Marines because of their low hit numbers on their light cruisers, and Eldar generally don't care about your armor value. Pulsar lances hurt everybody. So even with your Gladiuses and your Novas and your Hunters, you may not have enough to stop them. But if you take, say, I don't know, a Retribution battleship, suddenly the Eldar have this giant, very long range battleship that is equipped with very effective weapons batteries that suddenly makes getting close to the Space Marine fleet incredibly dangerous. So this is your switch knife. This is what allows you to go toe to toe with fleets you're normally not really meant to fight against. So bear this in mind and pick wisely. Really read the Chaos lists and the Imperial Navy lists and find something that can work really well for you. Just remember, you can't take character ships and you can't take upgrades. So that's all for this video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all again really soon.